Hello, I am C3PO, and I believe the storyteller is ready, so let us begin.
This week, the story is about a rare season of unanimity among Star Wars fans. So often we have returned from the holiday season, having digested our annual portion of new content and having discussed it ad nauseum, talked about it maybe too much, sometimes disagreeing about what worked and what didn't work, and occasionally even having our own minds changed for the worse. But as we begin 2021 with The Mandalorian Season 2 freshly behind us, the outlook remains overall very positive, thank God, which is why this week we are counting down our top 6 favorite things about Mando Season 2. Ross, in the past, when we've kept the theme really broad, as we are doing this week, we've had different approaches to the detail that we decided to incorporate on our selections. So how did you go about breaking down your picks for this list?
So for this list, I really sorry about that. So for this list, I really kind of looked at it as the highlight reel for the season, and so the things that I'll remember the most, the top moments. So I really did treat them as moments from the story. I didn't necessarily view it. I know you and I chatted a little bit before in the same light as you. I could have taken that light, but it was just not my first interpretation of the task. And so I ventured forward with my first interpretation and also focusing specifically on the story and the characters, which is generally what I do. And in that same vein, I kind of distilled each highlight a little bit further down into, of course, why I liked it, but also kind of its winning moment as well. The maybe ultimate thing that pushed it over the edge. For me, it was really hard. I had 7 major ones, and so in the honorable mentions, I'll give a little extra shout out to the one that was on my list the entire time. It might have been the first one I wrote down. But ultimately got bumped down to number 7 in favor of some other ones. But it was such an easy list to prepare in the sense of having things to choose from. It would have been extremely easy to do. Well, I shouldn't say extremely easy because I don't know if there were 6 bad things in total, but what I'm saying is it would have been really easy to kind of just go through and like find those kind of couple things. But with so much that you love, it's kind of hard to, like, you don't want to leave something out or outrank something because you loved it all. But that's not really what this is about. And so overall, it was just fun to go through all of the highlights and the fact that there were so bloody many of them. And it just shows you that this is the right way to tell Star Wars stories. So you can tell full stories.
Well, I agree with most of what you said, except for that there are very few episodes in a season of television in 2020, and there aren't that many minutes in a single episode, in particular in The Mandalorian. They're not epic long episodes, and that's good. But what that generally means is that only 1 or 2 big things happens per episode. And where there's only 8 episodes per season, there's only going to be 10 or 12, 15 at most, like notable things that happen in a season. So if the season is overall good, you can surmise that the hit ratio is pretty heavy. It's pretty strong. And there were very few down moments in season 2 Mandalorian, but what I kind of determined is that once you isolate the very best ones, they're very likely most people's favorite ones. And then it's just kind of a game of rearranging them to your particular satisfaction. And what's more, you might just be doing your top 6 favorite episodes. Now, I've got a couple of installments on my list that come from the same episode, but overall, I kind of cover the whole season. And we agreed that the Spider episode 10, chapter 10, episode 2, it's probably the least interesting episode of the season, but I even hesitate to call it the worst because I still think it was good. So it's not going to turn up in my top 6 at any point, but that only leaves 7 more episodes to discuss in the 6 installment list. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I 100% understand what you're saying, and so I think we are in full agreement. I don't think we disagree on anything. I fully agree with you, and I think maybe it'll be interesting because based on the way you described that there, maybe we did interpret the task a little bit more similarly than I initially thought. But in that same vein, I definitely think I viewed it more granularly than you, even outside of maybe my distilling things down into a particular moment. Because I mean, even still in that vein, I easily have 15 things here that I could have put on a list, no problem. And that was quick. And those were like the big standouts. So I felt like if you had pressed me to make a top 20, I could have done it. And I guess it's just a matter of how granular you look at things. And so I think we can maybe kick things off with that. And if you want to kind of go first and,
Sure.
and say what your number 6 thing was, and we can really see how we interpreted this as opposed to beating around the bush.
Right. So my 6th favorite thing from Mando season 2 is in fact pretty granular. It's a moment in the final episode of the season when Din removes his helmet for the 2nd time this season. So Din the Mandalorian, of course, removes his helmet twice in this season, 3 times overall so far in the series. In this season, it was once because he had to, just to get out of a jam. He had no other choice. He had to kind of put his internal code aside. The 2nd time, I guess, simply put, he took it off because he wanted to have an affectionate moment with this creature that he loves. As I mentioned when we discussed the season finale a couple of weeks ago, Pedro Pascal's acting against a lifeless puppet is really special. And it's true that it's easier because the technology is good and millions of dollars went into creating this incredibly lifelike puppet. Yes, we all believe on some level that Grogu is real. Credit to the creators. But Mando has always felt really connected to Grogu. In this particular instance, the heartbreak on his face, realizing he might never see Grogu again, is so sincere and spectacular. See, Disney loves to make us cry. I watched Pixar's Soul over Christmas. And I'm kind of at the point now where like I love to let them make me cry because more often than not, they come by it pretty honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I have more to. I can certainly talk about this a little bit later on. It shares, I guess, kind of in the way we viewed this task. It shares certain elements of things that I'll talk a little bit more about. But this moment's incredible. It's just in particular, the acting from Pedro Pascal, something I didn't pick up on, but has been pointed out to me and is very noticeable when you watch the scene again. In particular, the mask when he puts it down, it's facing away from him. For kind of further emphasizing the choice that he's making and how easy it is for him. It's not an instance where he's hesitating. I mean, and everything else, or like better yet, I'll die before I let a robot see or a droid see my face. Whereas he doesn't really care about anybody else even being in the room. And the fact that you only get a couple shots of Pedro's face all season, it makes a huge difference. The kind of course, the emotional relationship with them. I'm not sure if you have a ton else to say, as you have a clean transition into mine, if you want to go with that.
Yeah, you go right ahead. This is probably going to motor pretty quickly because we're talking about like momentary things.
Sure.
We've very recently dissected the season, but you go right ahead.
Yeah, well, my number 6 is in particular the cafeteria confrontation, and so I guess I put in here the winning moment being the shared glances between Bill Burr and Pedro Pascal, and the way that they have those, just the subtleties in their acting, the glances that they share back and forth. In particular, just Din, how uncomfortable he is. Not having his helmet on and having just everything out in the line, and Mayfeld playing fast and loose. The acting from the guy from Game of Thrones, he played the character of Valen Hess, who was talking about Operation Cinder and Burnin' Khan, and it was just such a good scene. The acting was sensational. It was in a cafeteria. It was as if Han and Luke had turned like down the wrong way on the Death Star with Chewie as a prisoner, and they ended up in the cafeteria, and they bumped into some guys and they're like, "Hey, TK-421, come down, come have lunch with us." And it's just like it's like the ridiculous kind of curveball that could happen. It makes complete sense. And so I really loved the way that it was a classic trope of Star Wars, but with this total new twist. And it was an acting clinic from a character who we've seen grow an absurd amount as we watched him closely in Din, but then also a character like Mayfeld, who is also showing that he's growing a lot as well, and that maybe just in general the kind of the relationship and the two of them have. And then of course it ends with a funny little bit of just like, okay, shit, fuck, let's shoot everyone, and then they got to get out of there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it is become such a. I don't even want to call it a trope because I think that kind of has a bit of a negative connotation. It's a tradition of Star Wars.
Yeah.
To infiltrate the bad guys area by wearing their uniforms, and in this case, they do kind of have to step up their lie just in order to blend in, and Bill Burr actually really steals the scene, although everybody does a phenomenal job. I heard Bill Burr discussing this recently on his podcast, and he called Rick Famuyiwa one of the great badasses he's worked with in the business. And I thought,
yeah, I heard that as well, which is true, and they've got a great chemistry, and I think it makes sense for Favreau and Filoni to have a point person on every show as well. It seems like, because obviously Favreau is point person on Mando, Filoni will be point person on Ahsoka. Rodriguez is going to be point person on Book of Boba Fett. It would make sense to have a guy like Famuyiwa be kind of running anchor on something like Rangers of the New Republic, for example. And so,
do you think that we could see Burr on that show?
I could see him being like an informant, someone who's out, who's kind of out on bail, but is working with the New Republic to kind of serve, to pay off his time, the exact same way that Horatio Sands' character is working for Grief Karga. I think but Bill Burr is a trained sharpshooter, so he's going to be put on Suicide Squad type missions, would be my guess. Maybe he's going to be Carson Teva's, he's going to be his, what's his his CI.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Just something like that could be kind of cool.
Sure. Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Something I like about the cafeteria scene is that, and that whole sequence inside the base, is that it really mundanifies the Empire as it exists right now. It almost reminds me a little bit of the Adam Driver, Matt the janitor, Kylo Ren sketch from SNL.
Absolutely.
Because it's just like, it makes everyone just like a boring paper pusher. And the fact that there is a cafeteria shines such a hilarious light on the everyday of this like sinister organization that we've only ever seen represented by like giants in masks.
And but also the other stormtroopers were like impressed by them because they actually survived as opposed to everybody else. But then they're just completely shocked and they don't even know what to do. They're just holding the tray, and then Bill Burr shoots a few more. But I think that like when you have one person doing all the talking, of course he's going to steal the scene. But I think Pedro, I mean, he only shows his face twice, and the other one carries a lot of water. But I think this one deserves more attention than maybe it's going to get. A lot more attention than it's going to get in retrospect. I think this episode in general won't maybe be talked about as being as good as it was.
Okay, very good. All right, my number 5 is another cool guy one-off scene stealing heat checker. And it's the casting in general of Timothy Olyphant in The Mandalorian. Alternatively, I think one of my biggest complaints about this season is that we didn't get enough of him, and I suspect we probably will. We will get more Cobb Vanth in Star Wars to some degree. I said several weeks ago when we talked about his episode, Timothy Olyphant kind of has like Harrison Ford 40 years ago kind of charisma. He's cool like in general, but he also fits the genre specifically well because of his Western background, and also Star Wars is pretty welcoming to anybody who has his kind of
pedigree,
charisma.
Oh yeah.
And in a season that features a lot of different law enforcement, this is something we haven't discussed at length in discussing Mando season 2, is there's all these different versions of police in this season, and he's the first one you get. His marshal or sheriff or whatever of a hard luck town, I think, is my favorite iteration in the season. He's this combined version of like an action hero. He's got action hero elements, ingredients, and he's also got an everyman ingredient. And I think that's when Star Wars is at its best, when you can see yourself as the hero. You can pretend that you're him. And so that's why I think he's important in the franchise.
Yeah, I think that was extremely well said. And I think you even, I love the everyman aspect at the end there. Because, yeah, he's wearing a sweater.
Right.
He's wearing a sweater, and the Boba Fett gear doesn't fit that well. Neither does that helmet. It's just because it's just the way that you have it. And so it's, he looks cool. He is cool. He's got swagger and charm. kicked off the season so well. The casting was great, and I do love the way that they portray him as an old school sheriff. I was listening to an interview with Paul Sung-Hoon Lee, who plays Carson Teva, and he was talking about how he was told that it was like playing a traffic cop with also a bit of a U.S. Marshal as well. And so it was kind of interesting. And so Cara Dune is also a Marshal. And so you're right. There's really all those kind of those blends. You've got the Old West Sheriff Marshal, and then you've got kind of the U.S. Marshal, but also the sort of almost like a bounty hunter sort of police enforcer with Cara Dune. And you've got like this traffic cop. And so maybe they will unite those in kind of a Rangers of the New Republic capacity, or maybe Cobb Vanth will come back in Book of Boba Fett because they have some form of shared history in the sense that Boba Fett knew where his armor was and didn't take it from him.
And he's based on Tatooine.
And Boba Fett's back on Tatooine. And is Boba going to clean up Tatooine and Cobb will be an ally? Or will Boba be Boba of old and Cobb will be trying to take on the man who he previously wore the armor of, but he now is completely bare. So I don't know how he could ever pull that shit off, but remains to be seen. I would not expect that. I would not expect in a show where you're supposed to root for Boba Fett for Cobb Vanth to be the antagonist, though. That doesn't seem to work.
No, that's not going to work, but they can be adversaries to it. If not like mortal enemies, they can kind of be adversarial. And it remains to be seen exactly how Boba struggled to get his armor back. He knew Cobb Vanth had it, and with his martial arts skills, he could have taken it from him, whether he had Mandalorian armor or not. Like you said, like the armor doesn't really fit him that well. And actually, I think that's something that that Din views as a character flaw in Cobb Vanth, that he would wear the Mandalorian armor even though he's not entitled to it by creed. It's actually very heroic that Cobb wears it because he knows he needs it to protect his people. At the end of the day, he's just looking out for his guys. And so he wears it because it makes him more formidable, and that's admirable.
Yeah, he's a former slave. That's something, I don't know if they would mention that on the show, but they said he grew up on Tatooine his whole life. He's just a small town guy, and he's just trying to protect his people. Like they mentioned the school that they have to protect, and he doesn't like the Tuskens because they're raiders. But he's willing to clearly get over that because it's purely a matter of just perception, and he's a very good person, and he honors his word and he gives back the gear. And so, he fits in Star Wars. He was maybe number one on my list for people I wanted cast in Star Wars. So he was certainly up there, and that was great to see. It was the perfect fit for him too.
Okay, you're number 5.
My number 5 will be right along those lines in terms of, we just talked about a bit of a martial artist and a legend proving the hype finally. And when Boba Fett puts the gear on, and even really just in general, the return of Boba Fett when he comes back for his armor, the way he destroys stormtroopers with the gaffy stick, and is just a complete total badass. And the way that they destroy those, it's a great scene to have him come back, and we can chat about it a little bit further because I know that you mentioned there that, but yeah, it's so nice to have a character that was so one-dimensional and such a half character, and then you get another half character version of him in Attack of the Clones, to have him kind of really come together as one character. Uniting kind of all these different eras and really making them feel worthy of all of the stories that are told, and the badass look and the neat arts.
It's some of the best fan service of all time.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Realization of Boba Fett. Absolutely. Is it my turn again?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how we want to go in the speed on some of these, and I'm gonna have a lot of things that are also pretty similar to some of the stuff you've even said as well, but
probably very likely you're going to have some iteration of what I'll say next for my number 4, which is just the sequence between Ahsoka Tano and the Magistrate. Is that going to appear on your list at any point? This is my number 4.
No, it's not.
Not specifically? Okay, well, let me just say my piece about it then. This episode was a very clear turning point for the season. Up to this point, I'd started to get although I'm enjoying myself a whole lot, I was notably getting a little bit restless with the formula. That was completely stripped away, and we're brought toward this highly anticipated character who we were almost certain was going to turn up at some point. But that in itself is a little, shall we say, nerve-wracking. Jedi action is brought back to us. Classic light side, dark side duel is brought back to us. I think the Magistrate on her own is very cool. I'd be glad to see more of her character if it's necessary. The duel in its setting, all of the like the Asian film aesthetic that they've imbued in this particular episode, and it ultimately leads up to the mention of Admiral Thrawn, is really what got me into a new level of pumped upness for this season overall. It kind of changed my tune entirely, and all of a sudden I was obsessed with The Mandalorian until it was done. After the arrival of so many extended characters otherwise in the show so far, I think Ahsoka and Thrawn as well feel like we're finally in the big time. We're playing like big boy checkers. And I barely knew who they were, and even I got to be that excited. And so I think that moment is really something to write home about.
I'm super glad you talked about it, because it didn't make my list, but it's of course on the honorable mentions. Just hearing Thrawn being mentioned was super awesome.
Right.
The fight itself, I wasn't a huge fan of it. Like, I liked it. I think some people misinterpret it in thinking that Ahsoka wasn't completely toying with the Magistrate. I very much believe that the Magistrate, I think there's about a 0%, maybe a 0.01% chance, give her that benefit of the doubt, that she actually had been like, Ahsoka. Yeah, took the lightsaber out of her hand, other than Ahsoka was trying to hold back so much that when maybe, I can understand that maybe she did fling it out of her hand, and then Ahsoka decided to actually play fair, because within 5 seconds after that, the fight was over with her shadow. So I very much believe it was a toying with fight. But the fight itself didn't really stand out as much to me, because the Ahsoka versus Maul fight from earlier in the year was bonkers good, and one of the best fights in so long. And so it was a little bit different, just in the sense that it didn't remind me as much of Ahsoka. And sure. So that's really more so the way I saw it. But it was just one of those things that, of course, you can learn with over time. Obi-Wan from Revenge of the Sith sure as shit doesn't fight like he does in A New Hope. And so it's one of those things that we haven't seen this character in a while. And so it's not something I see as an inconsistency or a problem, just not something that stood out to me as being like a massive, massive highlight. But I love that you mentioned the aesthetic as well, because when you view all of the aspects, the fact that how they got there, the fact that Mando's outside doing his own little Western duel as well, the entire Japanese influence, the planet.
The woods are really stylistic in that episode.
I was going to say the planet of Corvus and the atmosphere being green. I lost my mind. I love that. And those weird like dinosaur things in the background. So like all of like those three things right there, like the style, the planet, and like and Ahsoka's opening shot where she's just taking out, like that would be when it comes to the action shots, that would be my favorite action shot of the episode is when it opens up and with the sabers. But just overall beautiful stylistically, and also the conversation, the one that she shares with Grogu, that's really powerful as well.
Yeah.
And
and maybe in a way it is Corvus that I'm trying to send up here in this moment, because I just like I said, I really
amen to that.
Like a paradigm shift in this particular episode, and it really felt like some style was applied to it, and I think that bodes well for Dave Filoni's prospects as a live action director. He if he wants it, he has to be given the opportunity to direct a Star Wars film, and I would just be over the moon to see that.
That's true. But I'm also at a certain point where, and I know some people agree with me, but I'm a very different person to you, and I'm also very different in the way I like to consume content as well, in the sense that I just fundamentally prefer television to movies. And I also I think Star Wars, the way that you can flesh things out, I think it's really great on television. And so I don't necessarily think it's necessary. I think the way that Dave Filoni is getting something like Ahsoka, but like you said, if he wants it, he 100% deserves the opportunity. I 100% agree with that. But I'm in absolutely zero rush, because the storytelling that you can do with television, in my opinion, it's even more enriching. I mean, if you like, the crawl is one thing, absolutely, and there's absolutely a place for the Star Wars movie. I will never not say that, but I don't necessarily know if it's. I should be describing it as way more of a positive, in the sense that it's just I love the fact that there are so many other mediums that can allow people to fully realize the Star Wars story that they want to tell. And actually, there's something I really want to get into later on that, just as kind of like a theory that I have that's just kind of fun.
Yeah, I think I'm just in terms of Star Wars, I'm still a theatricality purist, and
You also love movies too.
I love movies. I like movies more than TV, but I also like great television, and I
Of
don't
course.
think that Dave Filoni should stop being a great showrunner, because he is one. And also he's very comfortable with the episodic format, which he's been doing for a long time. I would just be so interested to see, like, if he's given the time, like a couple years to work on one singular creation in one mixed down file, like that would probably look really cool. Is it your turn for number 4, or are we moving, or did we skip one?
Did you do 4 yet?
I just did 4.
Okay, then yeah, it would be my turn for number 4. And yes, and under that circumstance, Colin, I 100% agree, because if you view, and I adored like everything that I say on this list, but my favorite moment from Star Wars television this year is the last scene of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And as much like I adore this, I think The Mandalorian is the best thing we've seen in Star Wars since 1983. But it's just in terms of like, but the movie that he created with those last 4 episodes was sensational. And you know that he's been working on that ever since the show was canceled. And so you're 100% right in the sense of being able to tell that distilled story. It's going to be friggin' amazing. And so
you're such a Star Wars yearbook. You have a superlative for every moment. Like, my favorite Star Wars moment since 1983 is this, but my favorite TV moment of the year was that. And my favorite character, everything is in some kind of top 2 for you.
You want to give things their due.
I agree. Better to be positive.
Exactly. And so I haven't really I didn't like, we did talk about one half of this, but it was for none of the reasons that my number 4 is also Cobb Vanth. And it's for all of the other reasons. And I didn't mention any of them, and you didn't really focus on any of them either, which is great. And it's because of his origin. And that's where it really kicks off. And the way you described how your interest ramped up with that episode with Ahsoka, my interest in this, like, I was giddy, just was waiting for season 2, but I was not expecting season 2 to like if you average out season 1, I don't know, it's an 8.5 out of 10, but like season 2 is like almost like probably a bloody like 9 or 9.5 out of 10. Like the fact that it's even improving, and it kind of kicks that off right away with this like almost movie level episode, but rooted from a character that comes from a book. And so it was such an acknowledgement of everything else that's been worked on and all the other projects that have been done within the Star Wars canon and universe, and an acknowledgement of the fans who had put the time into consuming those books. And there was no reason for that character to not be Cobb Vanth. And that way it worked perfectly. And the fact that you wanted to tell the story and bring in Boba Fett, you could have gotten away with not having him be such an important character, but it was such an enriching part of that episode, and it gave a strong backstory for the people who understood that. And then it, of course, opened up to what the rest of the season was going to be. And so it got me, after season 1, you're like, okay, we know that with the Darksaber, and that's going to be like, okay, well, where are things going? Where's like, what's Grogu? Are his people the Jedi, or his people like the Yoda species? But then things opened up a whole nother can of worms with this episode as to the potential. And then we see at the very end of the episode, you get Temuera Morrison. And so it was such a great reveal to see the Boba Fett gear. And we kind of known beforehand he was probably going to be Cobb Vanth. But then to have that flashback and then to see the missile used, it was just too badass in every way. The use of the missile was so awesome. Amazing. And that flashback lining up really quite well with his use in the Aftermath book. It was great. But yes, of course, he looked badass too, and Timothy Olyphant was amazing.
Yeah, I realize now that most of what I said was just like man crush stuff, but I co-sign on everything that you said as well.
Well, no, but it was like, if we're just talking about man crushing, I'll throw that in my honorable mentions as well for Timothy Olyphant. He was awesome. But
Well, and what you just said is kind of what I was trying to say in their reference to Thrawn and of course Ahsoka as well.
totally.
This actualization of characters who otherwise have just been theoretical in like text. That's not the case with Ahsoka, but it is for Thrawn for the most part. This is just like a big time book character, and Cobb Vanth is not even a big time book character. He's like
no, he's small time book character.
Yeah.
And Thrawn, like, that's something that I, before even seeing it, unless it's butchered, I can imagine will be right up at the top of my list for next season's one, if he's indeed in next season, or in season 4, whenever he finds his way into one of these shows. But
so
mentioning his name is just so exciting for the possibilities and what you get to theorize again.
It's cohesive that it's just further strengthening the core of this singular universe, and it's rewarding to fans, and it's encouraging to people who don't know about every little detail. And I say this all the time, but that's when Star Wars is at its best.
Absolutely.
Term for number 3.
Yeah.
Okay, this is we're just gonna pick up on what we put a pin in a second ago and just discuss the reintroduction of Boba Fett a little bit further. This is probably the supporting character we ended up discussing the most this season.
I'd say so.
And it's not just because he's cool and has got like new scars and a bald head. It's not just because it's exciting that they brought back an actor who we've seen previously in Star Wars. The development of the character, this is what you were discussing as well, as this like, now he's this like brutal lone gunman warrior, not a gunman, I guess, but just this like this scary guy who lurks in the shadows, is the realization of decades of fantasizing. Because up to now, he has only ever been this cool in our imagination.
Absolutely.
So to see him just like dummy those troopers, or don the armor, fire off that rocket like you were just talking about with Cobb is actually kind of meaningful. It's kind of poetic. Throw in that he's now got this like moral conscience where he actually kind of does believe in some version of right and wrong, or that he actually has genuine Mandalorian roots that we never knew about before. It's just all-time great fan service. And in particular, I think the Rodriguez episode is maybe over time will come to be my favorite episode of the season.
It was really, really excellent. And the way that he comes back and he's just like, I'm here for the armor. My armor. But yeah, my winning moment is the chain code element. Is the fact that like let me show you. And the fact that it's so steeped with canon and legends, and it connects Django and Boba, and having him wear that armor but be the different character, but be the same character. I mean, later on, I mean, it's not the specific moment we're talking about, but the paint job is awesome too.
Yeah, I know.
It has to be an honorable mention, just the paint job itself.
Totally.
And also not in the same moment, but Slave One's gyroscope, and the use of the seismic charges. So his just general return, but in so many ways, everything just validating. And so if you've been a big Boba Fett fan your entire life, it's purely because of the fun you had playing with this action figure or your imagination. It was nothing you saw on the screen.
No.
And so now you have something to finally go along with that. And the rest of us can now have a new level of appreciation for this character, who I think is, well, we know he's going to get more in the Book of Boba Fett, but I think is also going to get more time in the Bad Batch as well. And so I think this is going to be a character who we are only starting to learn more about, and is one that, I mean, I would never have been excited about the Book of Boba Fett, but I certainly am now, and that's great.
Yeah, exactly. And I was kind of reluctant towards the idea of further exploring this character who already kind of seemed not resolved per se, but like because we had incorporated him in with the Mandalorian, it seemed unnecessary to me to show more of him. And then they gave us that, amazing post-credits scene, and like it just felt so good that I'm kind of at a point where I'm not going to reject any ideas they have, unless they're truly unthinkable, and nothing like that is currently in the cooker. So this is why I feel so optimistic about Star Wars in the next couple of years. Boba Fett's a big part of that. He was a huge part of the fun of Star Wars this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it would have not been I mean, we all knew he was going to be in the season, and wouldn't have necessarily I never would have predicted he would have been in it this much.
No, me neither. Yeah, he kind of became like a
A regular.
Yeah, a regular. I know. Go figure.
Yeah. And I will mention right now, because I'm going to be shocked if either of us have it any higher, because it's an honorable mention for me. But hung around with the awesome Fennec Shand all season, who was a solid honorable mention. And I'm very thrilled as part of the Star Wars universe, and will be in 2 shows confirmed in Book of Boba Fett and Bad Batch.
It's confirmed that she's going to be in Bad Batch as well?
Yep.
So you think that she's going to be like a regular supporting character in Book of Boba Fett?
Yeah, I think so. I think Book of Boba Fett's also going to be just a one and done. I think I'm guessing it's going to be 4 to 8 episodes.
Interesting though that he's kind of decided
I could be wrong,
this right hand man, or this co-captain in Fennec Shand, whereas he is also kind of a Lone Ranger, and that's what he was before. But he seems to work pretty well with this character, who I like. She's really cool, but I'd like to see a little more story from her.
Definitely, and I think we'll get a good backstory in Bad Batch. Boba has worked with others in the past. He's worked with Bosk before, and he was trained by Aura Singh, and he worked also because he was, orphaned pretty young, and so he was raised by a lot of other bounty hunters, and so he worked in bounty hunting teams during the Clone Wars era. And also there was in a lot of Legends and in like a video game, Django had a right hand in Zam Wessel. And so they're very much mirroring that relationship with Fennec, and also in the sense that it's a sharpshooter.
Right. Okay, your turn for number 3.
My number 3 would be Mando returning the favor to Moff Gideon with saying, "You have something I want." And it is just such I know it's got a little bit of a taken corniness to it, but it's just so great to see Din growing as a character. And this is the main character of our show. This is somebody who this entire episode, this entire series, but this entire episode is about how much he's growing as a character, and how much he's willing to change the way that he's approaching anything for Grogu. And he's not, and even Gideon confirms it in the next episode. Assume I know everything. And so as a result of that, Din has kind of already assumed he knows everything. And he told him his name and Cara Cynthia Dune and that she was from Alderaan, like all these different things. And like, because of that, it's further proving how uncharacteristic what Din is doing is, and how that's scary, especially seeing as everybody knows what a Mandalorian is. The hype and the fear around Mandalorians is not a small thing, and it's something that's talked about. And they talk about the Jedi Mandalorian wars and how really it's the only comparable. And even though later on we realize that's not so true because there's no comparable. But it really goes to spark a little bit of fear in Gideon. But it's just, I love the moment, and I love him throwing his words back in his face when it really, he has him cornered one time, and then in the other time he's up in his own space in the galaxy, but he's still able to get the job done and infiltrate. And so I love that scene. I know you find it a little bit corny, but I think it's great.
It is objectively corny. I don't have an otherwise issue with it. I think it's fun, and it's a lot like Taken, which also pleases a lot of people. I'm just surprised that it's and I guess I don't know this for sure, but I'm surprised that it's the Moff Gideon installment on your list, who overall I kind of think is a bit of an anticlimax for this season. I don't hold it against Giancarlo Esposito. I don't hold it against anybody because I don't think we're done with him yet. But I was most looking forward to seeing him be the menace that I'm pretty sure he's capable of being. And we sort of fell short of that this season. And in that particular moment, he is being made into the little guy, which is also fine because I'm rooting for Din, and I love nothing more than when he gets really serious about protecting Grogu. I also am a little nitpicky, as other people have been, about the fact that he kind of just gives away the element of surprise in that moment. But it's fine because it's the poetry of him saying Gideon's words back to him is very badass, and it sets up a really exciting final episode. So don't get me wrong. I like it a lot too. But
Yeah,
it is important.
and in particular, the replacement of it with he, and just the emphasis of the he means more to me, and the threat that goes along with that. But also at the same time, the fact that Gideon held the cards last time and still kind of holds the cards, but Gideon was the one making the threat last time, and now Mando's the one making the threat. And a crazy man making the threat with nothing left to lose is scary.
Bingo. That's very true. So you don't have to elaborate, but is this your Moff Gideon installment on the list, or do you have more to come?
This is my Moff Gideon installment on the list. Another excellent honorable mention, but that is that I have to say. But this is my Moff Gideon installment. So I'm assuming you have one more.
No, I don't. I actually,
Okay.
that's my point. Is I kind of left him off my list because I was a little disappointed by his overall screen time. I like the lightsaber duel, but I thought it was too short.
It was, and his best moment is right before the lightsaber duel.
Yeah, it is. I agree.
It's the conversation. Well, and then as well, the taunting after with the bloody mouth is also great.
Although a good moment is mid-season when you realize that they're doing some clone shit again. It's the ending portion of, I forget which episode.
Yes, with the Dark Troopers.
Yeah, like that's a pretty great Gideon moment.
That's true. I prefer the Snokes and Tanks in that episode to the Dark Trooper reveal.
Okay.
Because at that point, I was like, there was still potential of those being connected. And in the end, the Snokes and Tanks is the more intriguing thing to me than Dark Troopers, because that's not part of, I mean, they were cool, but not a particular thing that I grew up on,
Right.
the way some people did.
So my second favorite thing about Mando season 2 was the reveal of Grogu's name and his background with the Jedi. So we're going to talk about that.
Well, let's just talk about it right now.
Might as well get to it right now. The great mystery of this character is something we didn't even know. I mean, we didn't even know Grogu was going to be a thing when we were excited for The Mandalorian before it had premiered. And he, was very quickly propelled into the great canon of TV icons of
Baby
an
Yoda.
age. Like he's like everyone's gonna remember the term Baby Yoda, right or wrong, for decades to come. And he had so much personality. I think that just kind of represents. Oh yeah, if you watch us on YouTube, Ross has a really fantastic Grogu shirt that I'll describe for the podcast listeners. It's a Grogu like Old West wanted poster, and it says wanted 50-year-old bounty. An adorable little picture of Grogu, and it says dead or alive, could be force sensitive. It's a great shirt.
It is a great shirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw it on sale on Amazon, so I had to grab it.
I don't know where I was going with that, but he's just like, he has so much personality, and the fact that everybody got talking about the mystery of Baby Yoda, whether through memes or otherwise, just showed a lot of promise for what was to come for Star Wars. He's kind of emblematic of the future of Star Wars. And in this particular sequence, we get to learn that he has this history and relationship to the Star Wars that we've previously known, whether we knew he was there or not. It's just so fascinating that he was at the Jedi Temple, or that he has potentially a relationship with Luke or Master Yoda. And it's just, it gets so exciting to learn that he's going to be a character and not just a puppet, not just a Beanie Baby.
Yeah, and that's why this tangentially is my number one, and I'm not stupid, so I can figure out what your number one will be, and so we can just talk about this one, and we'll talk about the next one, because in fact it's my number two, so it's a clear balance, and so it's such a great, just in general, what I have as my number one is just Grogu becoming a character. Yeah. And it's like you just said, no longer being the puppet, but the fact that we now have a name, which is something the show for some reason hates giving to characters. But it's such it's a nice reveal. It's subtle. I love the way that they do it, and then that kind of bonding moment that he has with Ahsoka. But in particular, the winning moment is it's when Din says his name. Yeah. And it's just that immediate reaction, and how also Din loves that at the start of the next episode, just Grogu, and just every time he says his name, he gets his reaction, he gets a chuckle, and then he goes in and has his little like no, and how he it kills him to have to give him up at the end, and that's what makes that moment so heartbreaking at the end, is of course their relationship that this builds further out. But that's really why these, like my previous moment with Din becoming a more complete character, and like these are our two leads, and or I mean Grogu, it's a little in flux at the moment, but they went from being great Star Wars characters to sensational and beloved Star Wars characters, and people that we care about and don't want to see leave and don't want to see separated from one another. I mean, this is one actor and a puppet, but we care so much about their relationship because they've just made it seem very realistic, and they've learned about one another. And Grogu's protected Din, and Din's protected Grogu, and Din came back for Grogu. And it's consistently it's the overall theme that carries everything forward. And despite the fact that the other moment that we're going to talk about, when I watched that final episode, the thing that stood out to me was still the final moment that Din and Grogu shared. More than anything. And it was the conversations that they had, the fact that they spoke to each other all season, as opposed to Din just kind of like, I mean, Din still does talk a lot at him, of course. But the fact that Grogu talks back, because Grogu is feeling more comfortable, and we learn more about Grogu's PTSD. And we learn about how he's afraid of his own powers, and like doesn't really feel comfortable or even thinks to use them until it's just, he's so comfortable around Din that it just, his instinct comes out, and then he'll use the Force because it's natural for him to use the Force. It's not natural for him to suppress it, but he has to all the time. And so we learn so much about this character, and then he does the meditation, and the kind of person who comes looking for him, and what he needs from a teacher, and the fact that he wants to still maybe learn about the Force, and the fact that he remembers Yoda when the two of him and Ahsoka share a smile.
Does he kind of react specifically to Yoda?
Yeah, when she mentions Yoda, he looks up, and then Ahsoka smiles. And so it shares that wonderful moment. And then, of course, the one that Grogu has with R2. And then I think another thing that was incredibly important that you said, Colin, for the next 1,000 years of Star Wars storytelling, they can give us Grogu.
Yeah, he can be around forever.
Grogu, there's no reason you do not make Grogu as important to the galaxy as Yoda was for the previous 1,000 years. Now, give him a happier end, please. Yoda is such a sad and tragic figure. But the wisdom that a character who is that smart, but clearly we're gonna likely in the end will be raised with good family values, and will learn the importance of letting go. And I showed you a really cool cartoon and you can find it kind of online, just of like a kind of an imagined future Grogu, kind of reflecting on his relationship with Din and learning how to let go, and the fact that Din lets Grogu go in the end of this. He lets him go off to Luke, and that was an important thing for Shmi to do for Anakin. And so as long as Grogu doesn't come back to see Din die, then this is going to be a very good thing for Grogu about his fears of attachment and loss. And you can build that into a really strong character that we're going to know from the bottom, like from the start of his life all the way up to the end. And so you can have someone who's as cool as Yoda and as wise as Yoda, but we don't have to lose the mystique of our Yoda. So we get someone who is like Yoda and as wise as Yoda, but we get to know why they're so wise through all these years. And that's so exciting for the future of Star Wars storytelling, because we also all love Grogu.
Well, it's also why I don't really feel that nervous about the eventual reunion of Din and Grogu. It's going to happen, guys. Like, don't worry about it. Like, the show's called The Mandalorian. The lead characters are the two Mandalorian. You know, they're the dad and his son. It's going to get back together. There's no reason why tragedy has to befall one of them before that happens. Doesn't mean it's going to be all sunshine in the in-between. And we had been talking quite a bit about how there was a probability that there would be a separation at the end of this season. And we thought it would happen, and then we kind of got subverted, and it still happened. And so it's fine. It's interesting. I think you were also the one who brought it to my attention that if and when Grogu eventually speaks, there's no reason he should speak the way Yoda does, which will be jarring. I mean, it'd be jarring to hear him speak words at all.
He should speak very, very, and my guess is that will be what it is. Is that way that, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but just my guess is that will be the way that they can keep the character moving forward, is that Din barely speaks.
Yeah.
And so this character will just say so few words. And that will be the thing that allows this character to have poignance. They will just say so few things.
Well, except there's a possibility that when he and Din are reunited, he is much older and different. It's very possible that he has upgraded, or he has or he is. It doesn't mean he won't still love Din, and Din likewise, but like he might have grown and matured.
I don't think so.
Extreme. No,
I don't think so. And I think he will, but I don't think Luke can know enough. I think Luke can have the ability to help him unlock what he's previously learned, but I think that's mostly like, I don't think they're necessarily, I don't think Grogu needs to be gone for like several years. And I don't think that they'll have him go through like a tadpole to frog type metamorphosis while he's away from us per se. And so he may grow a bit, but I don't know if they would give him the ability. I don't know if they would age him that same way. So I think we'll maybe see some differences certainly in him, but I don't know if they would do that. I think people would feel weird about that if he came back and he was not the same Grogu at all.
it would be delicate for sure. I think it's very possible the show does a time jump.
Yeah, but at the same time, that is true. And if you do a time jump, when are you doing the time jump? And then it's a matter of, do we have them before you do the time? So there is a lot of things in there that we won't know until we see season 3, or at least start season 3. And then my number 2 and your number 1, I'll let you introduce it.
Are you sure?
I'm going to guess it's the same one. So yeah, go for it.
Well, except for that, we might have picked like slightly different facets of it, because in particular, obviously a season highlight, one of the great Star Wars highlights of the modern age is the return of Luke Skywalker. But yeah, in particular on my list, my favorite thing is Ignite the Green. It is the first reveal that it is Luke's green lightsaber. And I've said my piece in the past about how that particular weapon is something I'm quite partial to. There's a whole sequence of things that you get to witness as that begins to happen slowly. And as such, there's this sequence of like cardiac moments that occur, because you realize pretty quickly what's probably happening. And then slowly you start to realize what's definitely happening. And one of the transitional moments is the first sight of the green lightsaber. Now we can discuss until we're blue in the face, or until we're pixelated in the face, whether or not his eyes look dead, or they could have done better with the deep fake, or it kind of doesn't matter. He is the Luke Skywalker that,
yes,
regardless of what your thoughts on The Last Jedi were, or whatever, I'm pretty sure we can all be in agreement that the Luke Skywalker with his hood up, with that green lightsaber, walking to rescue the good guys, is the Luke that we left in the 80s, and we've been hoping to see again someday. And the fact that it was a surprise makes it all the more emotional. It was just, frankly one of the great TV moments of an age, and I wish I could experience it again for the first time.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was 5:00 in the morning, and when that X-Wing flies on screen, and it's old, white, and janky, and just a little red stripe. And Kara makes the joke like, "Oh, one X-Wing, we're saved." You just want me to go and face the First Order with my laser sword? It was just so obvious who it was, and it was just, well, not so obvious, but in the same way. And like you said, and then the dominoes that happen of the each one thing. Like, yes, there's the X-Wing. Then there's the black cloak, which is not common for a Jedi, but we know it's a Jedi because boom, there's a lightsaber. Boom, It's green. Boom, there's a belt. Boom, there's the hilt. And then, of course, the door opens, and then the hood reveal. The winning element of it for me, of it all, was the fact that it was so much the exact opposite, but so similar to Vader's moment in Rogue One. Right. And so Vader is slaughtering people. It's a hopeless moment, and Vader does not get what he wants. He doesn't get what he comes for. It just ends in death and destruction. And it ends, and like Vader's got like his saber, and he illuminates it in the dark, and Luke is kind of the same way, but Luke is killing lifeless droids to save a little kid. And he is the Luke Skywalker we know and love, and Vader is the Vader that we know and love. But in both instances, it's them marching through a hallway in a way that we have always imagined but never got to see. And both moments are, it's so great to have them as that father-son mirror, and the fact that it's Luke, and it is the same Luke. It's that voice. And are you a Jedi? I am. And just it feels great to. I was happy it was Mark Hamill, and it was just overall such an exhilarating, exciting moment, despite the fact that it was coupled with such a sad one.
I mean, I kind of only half agree. Like, I realize I just said that, hey, it's the Luke that we've been hoping we would get to see again. But in a way, it's a Luke we've never seen. And it mirrors what I just said about the possibilities for Grogu's future, and that a character can mature in a relatively short period of time, because it is Mark Hamill's voice, and it is Mark Hamill's face, and it is the heroism that we know he's synonymous with, but it doesn't have exactly all the personality that we're most accustomed to with the character of Luke, especially a young Luke.
He's wiser.
He's wiser, and he's much more stoic and placid because of the Force, and that's easily wrote within the show. We understand why that is, and there's no room for him to be like whiny or nervous in this moment, but it does kind of separate the two versions of the character.
It does, and I think it would have been a mistake to not have him be this way. And I think it shows, and because he is separated in each of the original trilogies, and it shows a bit of a progression. I would have been okay if he even wasn't wearing, like the same robes from 5 years ago. Be kind of okay with that. It could have been a slightly different color, but like obviously, I'm joking on that point. One thing that was kind of interesting, and it's been mentioned on a couple podcasts, and it's great because I only played the Battlefront campaign of the video game Battlefront 2 once, and I didn't finish it, but I did get to play the one Luke Skywalker mission, and it's a really cool. It's just a mission where you're Luke Skywalker and you help out some guy in the Empire who is trapped, and you save his life, and then he's kind of like, well, why'd you save my life? And you killed all those other stormtroopers. And he says, because you asked. They shot at me. They gave me no other option. And so it's just, it was this Luke. He says very few words, but he's very stoic, and he's very smart, but he's in the midst of his searching for items, and it falls around this same time period. And so I thought it was really interesting to see the similarities there, and the fact that it's very consistent, and it's very consistent with Obi-Wan, the centered Obi-Wan that we find in A New Hope. And that is the Jedi that Luke is trying to be the most like. This was a hermit. This was a guy who lived off on his own, didn't really talk to people, and just did his weird Force thing. And Luke is just trying to learn, and he's trying to learn and not make those same sort of mistakes. And so he's staying back. He's not getting involved in the big hubbub of everything. And he's leaving the galaxy up to his sister, and he's going to work on the Force and chill with Laura Santeca until Ben Solo is ready to train.
So obviously it's a lot of work to put together a Luke like this. As amazing as the technology is, it's not something they can do flippantly. What are the chances we're going to see him again in this show?
I think he has a chance of coming back in this show, just because Grogu will likely come back.
Right.
I would be curious, like maybe they will try and have him come back for whatever large event occurs that unites these other kind of shows, when there's going to be an event that involves Ahsoka, Rangers of the New Republic, and Mandalorian, some crossover event. Maybe Luke Skywalker will be involved in that, because maybe it'll be a few years out and they believe the technology will be ready. If you're okay switching to news, I can kind of do a little bit of a theory that I have, and then we'll transition with that one.
I love that. Yeah. Just if anybody has any that we missed, anything that they'd like to add, we'd love to hear it. Because
I guess. Yeah, I'll mention this, and we can do just like a really quick. Or did you have any other honorable mentions?
No, we covered so much good stuff in the season.
Yeah, the only other honorable mention that I would have was that I really wanted to say was Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan showing up when Mando was so screwed and Grogu was eaten. And it was just such a cool moment, the way that they raided that bloody ship.
You're right, and we talked a lot about the actualization of theoretical characters, or like
And that's why I felt better about leaving this one off, because
putting them on the main stage. But you're right, she deserves a mention. Absolutely.
Yeah, and in particular, she was so hateful, but in a really good way in the season finale. But that episode, Bryce Dallas Howard did such a kick-ass job. And if we talked about the season in terms of highlights of directorial achievement and cinematography achievement and writing achievement, I mean, we can go on and we could easily do that. And we'd have another 6 we could easily talk about as well.
That's right.
And then, of course, the one other thing was I did like when Din had to trade his jetpack for Grogu and killed the guy with
Yeah, that was so good.
That was amazing.
Classic moment. Okay, you want to transition to the news?
Yeah, just this kind of little fun theory I was thinking about. And so there's a droid story, which is going to be coming out on Disney Plus, and it's supposed to be a collaboration between ILM and Lucasfilm Animation. And so it's some form of like new heightened animation. And it's a droid story with 3PO and R2 and a new hero. I was thinking, what if this is, well, because first of all, it's the fact that it's a new type of animation is very exciting, and that's absolutely what Star Wars should be doing. It's experimenting with technology in the medium. But what could that allow for? Something that is that brings animation and live action closer together with CG and kind of merged in all those things. We're just talking about how do you actualize Luke Skywalker? Well, the best voice actor on the bloody planet, or one of them, and something that merges live action, ILM, and CGI, and all of the high quality visual effects and live action capabilities that Lucasfilm has with their animation department. Imagine what kind of new animation they may have in store for us. What if this Droid Story is a trial run for a whole new type of animation that could unite video games and animated TV into a singular looking medium? So that everything in video games and this TV show or new movies, or however they're done, they all have this uniform look. Or you can build, not necessarily, if maybe there's some level of realism that you want to play with and don't go with, and some more exaggerated effects. But what if this is a new way to just elevate the storytelling medium entirely? And now you've got Mark Hamill excited about Star Wars again. It's an opportunity. Maybe you get Anthony Daniels back so that he's, or maybe Billy D. Williams, because we know that he was looking for Osha Bastoon with Lando. And so like this is a whole nother opportunity for you to recast Han, recast Leia, recast Ben Solo, have them look exactly how you want, and not have anybody give you shit about how they look. But you get Mark Hamill's voice, you get Luke Skywalker in his prime. You can set this at the Mandalorian time period. You could set this 5 years before The Force Awakens, or anywhere in that time period. It blows the immersion opportunities wide open. VR, you go into that mindset. If you're creating just a new way for people to digest Star Wars, the opportunities are endless, especially if people can accept that and are accepting of these other mediums, which they so clearly are.
It's a really nice idea. I mean, it doesn't sound any less complicated though than CGIing someone's face onto someone else's body, which in fairness, Luke, for example, does kind of look like a video game character, and if the whole world around him matches that texture, then maybe it would be a little bit more accessible.
And also it expands what you can do. And maybe there is elements of mocap, but I'm not sure. But the value the Clone Wars brought to Star Wars is not lost on Lucasfilm. No. And a droid story seems like too interesting of a project to be anything other than an experiment.
And they seem to be dramatically undervaluing the power of video games, especially among Star Wars fan type.
Oh, people. Absolutely. There's something, and we'll use that as another transition piece, because the High Republic had a big announcement as well. And so no video games were announced for the High Republic, but that's an era where the Jedi are in their prime, and they're like US Marshals for the galaxy. Like, come on, that is prime video game opportunity. And also you have free storytelling reign where you don't have to get the same level of approvals for the Skywalker timeline. These authors are currently working in kind of their own little corner of the timeline that allows them to be able to have a little bit more flexibility for this exact reason, something that handicaps the video games. So totally agree on that. It would be nice to see more video games be introduced, but the High Republic era is looking really cool. The books are getting phenomenal reviews from the early people who have read them, so that gets me really excited. Claudia Gray, who's one of the better Star Wars authors, probably the best Star Wars author at the moment. She's working on a secret project for them as well, so that's good that she's the one who is working on that. And she seems to, her and Cavan Scott, another good Star Wars author, seem to be doing some of the bigger projects, which is good. There's 3 phases: Light of the Jedi, Quest of the Jedi, and Trials of the Jedi. And so it'll be interesting to see whether this is done in like kind of a short time burst, or if this will cover the whole High Republic era, because we know like Leslie Headland's show will be taking place at the end of the High Republic. So in that 50 to 100 years prior to the Phantom Menace. And so it'll be interesting to see if the High Republic era that they're currently working on is just the 200 years prior to the Phantom Menace, or if these phases are more large chunks of time, or as opposed to just maybe phases of story.
Right. Okay.
Yoda, apparently he's looking pretty good. Apparently he's got a bit of a crew though now. He doesn't just go out on his own. He's not just hanging out by himself and meditating. He does teach a lot of children, but he also works with other Jedi, and so he's not as much of a lone wolf staying back in the Jedi Temple, which is kind of cool.
And that's in what?
In the High Republic era.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and so these are in the novels, and the graphic novels, magazines, and comics. And then there's also the Drengir, which is like a dark side plant, which is kind of interesting. And it's kind of like almost like a physical manifestation of the virus like elements of the dark side. I don't know, maybe it's like animated itself by the dark side. I don't know. It seems very mysterious and kind of intriguing. And the good reviews that people are giving these is really encouraging for just what they can do in different eras. But yeah, there's a bunch of some cool titles of The Monster of Temple Peak, Out of the Shadows, The Edge of Balance, and The Race to Crash Point Tower. So some of them are very like YA titles. But some of them are really great titles. I love The Monster of Temple Peak. I think that's a cool ass title. It's a YA-ish title, but it's also super Star Warsy, which all of their titles are YA-ish.
Well, that's right. And also I kind of think it has more of a Hardy Boys aesthetic to it. I think and so does the other one you mentioned.
Oh, I guess I was going more on like Screech Owls. It was like, or
What a pull.
I know,
Yeah.
I was going with the Canadian Hardy Boys.
Right.
But yeah, and even like The Edge of Balance, which is actually kind of I don't know, better than The Rise of Skywalker.
Hey, that's true. Yep.
Yeah, that's a bad title.
Not good. Not so good.
Speaking of movies, though, just an interesting thing. We mentioned before how we still don't know anything about Rian Johnson's project, or J.D. Dillard and Matt Owens, how they had a project, and we don't know anything about that. Leda Kalogradis, who is doing the Old Republic adaptation, and then Kevin Feige as well. And so it'll be interesting to see what other movies, because there's, of course, Patty Jenkins and Taika Waititi, but there are other people that have been said to be doing Star Wars movies. So whenever those will be occurring will be interesting, and it'll be very interesting to see if there's any updates on them coming around the bend.
Yeah. I'm starting to feel like the Rian Johnson movie is just like mythologized and will never actually come to be.
Very possible now,
Yeah.
especially seeing as how long it's gone without actually happening.
Right.
Obi-Wan. So we're recording this on January 4th, but we'll put this out on January 5th. And so I think Obi-Wan starts on January 5th. So that's
Sweet.
Yeah. So it's getting its recording underway, which means they probably have their cast set. So it'll be interesting. We should get some probably casting news on that very soon then, if that's the case. Mando season 3 is pretty much officially coming out in 2022. So it is not going to be Book of Boba Fett, and then Mando season 3 coming out like immediately after, like, and Book of Boba Fett only being like 4. But they do say it's coming out very shortly after, that they will start filming Mando season 3 immediately after Book of Boba Fett, which they are filming now, and it will be coming out soon after. So I would imagine spring 2022, which
That's
is not
good.
too bad.
That's not too bad to have to. Remember when we saw? I guess it was probably Last Jedi, and then we saw Solo 5 months later.
Yeah.
To not have to wait that long. Although I prefer Star Wars coming out at Christmas time, and in this case, we will have Book of Boba Fett to discuss next Christmas. To not have to wait that much longer before Mando season 3 afterward will keep us so energized.
Absolutely. This year we will have Bad Batch, and I'll give that a go. I'll certainly watch that if it's of the Clone Wars caliber and not more like, as long as it's not of the Resistance age range. The Resistance it has its place, but it was of an age range that just it seemed like it started a couple of years below Rebels even, and so maybe it could have caught up to an age range that would have been more enjoyable, but it only ever had 2 seasons, so it never even really came close. Right. But if it's of the Clone Wars level of Star Wars immersion, then I'll certainly be watching that. Star Wars Visions will be coming out this year as well, and so that's kind of interesting. And those are kind of anime styled Star Wars shorts, and so those could be kind of interesting as to just being very creative, new interpretations of Star Wars. And then, of course, Book of Boba Fett. And so those will be the things that we currently know we're going to be seeing on the Disney Plus this upcoming year.
That's right. Okay, is that everything for the news?
That is everything in the good part of the news. One real bummer in the news. I was on the Reddit and I saw this the other day, and then it kind of made the circle news. But Tom Kane, who does the voice of Yoda and the narrator in the Clone Wars, he had a stroke at the end of November, and so he's still himself, which is great, but he's probably not going to be able to work again. I shouldn't say that. There's a chance he may never work again, but there's a chance he could. He's doing the occupational, or not the occupational. He's doing the what am I trying to say? The
rehabilitatory.
Thank you. The rehabilitation. Thank you. Yeah. But yeah, he's the voice of the Clone Wars, and he was Admiral Akbar in The Last Jedi. And he was in a bunch of other animated things. He's a voice acting modern legend, and so he's 58. He's the age of our parents, and so it's just it's not right. It's not fair. He is beloved in the community, and so people just want him to get better. And so hopefully he can get back to a good normal life for him. And if we're all lucky enough to get him to hear him work again, then that'll be great for all of us and great for him as well. But just getting him back to having a good life is all that matters.
I don't want to make any false equivalencies, but something I've always remembered was when Michael J. Fox was doing like The Good Wife or Scrubs or something. It was when he was kind of like doing his like victory lap as like an actor that everybody loves, and he was just doing like a lot of TV show appearances and getting Emmy nominations for them. Something he said was that like, I don't have to stop acting. I just have to play people who have Parkinson's. Yeah. And I always thought that was like, I mean, he's famous for his incredible attitude in general. But like, this guy might not be able to do the voiceover for the Clone Wars anymore. Maybe he will, knock on wood. But say he's not. It doesn't mean like, especially if he has a relationship with Star Wars, it doesn't mean they can't find a way to incorporate him and his new manner of speaking into a voice role that better suits him.
Absolutely. And that's a great way of putting it. Maybe it is a period of civil war across the galaxy. Maybe he won't be able to do that voice anymore, but maybe his Yoda will still work. And he was the Yoda in the Christmas special, or he narrated that. And I got to watch that over the holidays. And yes, it was it was kiddish and
we never talked about the Lego special.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was exactly what it was trying to do, and I thought it was great. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Pretty good. Yeah, it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
And what did you think of the voice actor who played Rey? Because as it turns out,
yeah, she was great.
She actually had some in the trailer. I didn't really think it showed off very well.
There was a couple lines that were bad, or maybe a couple emotions that just we're like, oh, that just doesn't like you could like we've heard enough emotion from Daisy Ridley being Rey where we can see the difference on certain things, but for the most part, it was excellent. Yeah, the only one that was off-putting was just how friggin' terrible Finn was.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
But yeah, the Emperor was I'm not a Robot Chicken person, but I do know the way that Robot Chicken has made fun of the Emperor for many years, and they have that similar style in the way that they make fun of him. So I thought that was funny the way that they did the relationship between him and Kylo Ren and Vader. And
I mean, Robot Chicken is stop animation with toys, and Lego is a toy, so it might be something deliberate about that choice.
Oh, absolutely, and I'm sure there are people who have worked on both. Because that comes from a place of absurd love, and that's the reason that's the only reason as to why those things you don't make fun of something that much when you're in comedy because you hate it. You make fun of it because you want to talk about it.
Usually that's right. So there are no
politics.
No birthdays for a couple more weeks, so we can stick a pin in that for now. But if you have a list of your favorite things you want to discuss in Star Wars, as I said, please do email us, recorder66podcast@gmail.com or tweet @recorder66.
Yeah, one other thing. I just noticed that I skipped over it in my notes for some reason. But the Acolyte did add another co-development lead with Leslie Headland, and that would be Rain Roberts, who's Lucasfilm's vice president of film development. She'll produce Rogue One, Solo, Rebels, and the sequel trilogy. And so she's experienced. I'm encouraged that there's somebody who's experienced with Lucasfilm properties. So this can be work with Leslie Headland. Everything I've heard from Leslie Headland tells me that she has the right view on Star Wars. So somebody who has got the lore and understands Lucasfilm is great. I hope that she spent a lot of time on Rebels and has spent a lot of time with Dave Filoni, because I do want Dave Filoni to still be the one that checks the boxes to make sure people aren't breaking the rules of Star Wars. Pablo Hidalgo, who is also one of the keepers of canon, has continued to kind of bury himself as just a bit of an ass in the fan base, and just it's just not being positive, and so you want to make sure that the keeper of canon and the right people are making sure that all the boxes are checked. But all that this tells me is that they're indeed doing that. And so across the board, it's so nice when all the news that you're getting in Star Wars is just like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's another like great little addition to get you more excited about something, knowing that, oh, they're either adding in somebody who's either worked on something in Star Wars before, or introduction of new fun people like Timothy Oliphant, like we talked about earlier.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you so much. We'd love to see your lists. Any other thoughts you might have about Mando Season 2? We probably won't have to discuss it at such fine detail for a little while yet. But if you have any ideas for themes you'd like to see us do top 6 lists, of course, we'd welcome that as well. As always, rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And until we are together again,
may the Force be with you.